Hey everyone, my name is Mike, and this is a too long didn't read version of Archimonde on Mythic. In Phase 1, Archimonde spawns Doomfire in front of him. It fixates a random ranged player, and a line of fire chases that player until the Doomfire is killed. Standing in the fires on the ground puts a stacking debuff on you for each patch of fire absorbed. This dot lasts about 12 seconds. Once it fades, all the fire that you collected will fall off of you. When a Lure of Flames is cast, any Doomfire patches up will be relocated. The entire raid will take damage for each patch of fire that gets relocated. Shadowfell Burst will knock 3 ranged players into the air. Anyone within 8 yards of those players also gets knocked up, so spread out. The fall damage is split amongst everyone that stands in these purple auras. Archimonde will also affect the tank with Deathbrand. This deals a high amount of damage as it spawns a Hellfire Deathcaller. The tank also takes damage every second until the Deathcaller dies. This ad will hit random people with Shadow Blast. This deals a little bit of damage and increases the shadow damage you take by 25% for 45 seconds, which stacks. At 85%, the boss will start casting Desecrate, which creates this giant green void zone and then spawns a pillar after a couple of seconds. This pillar deals raid-wide damage every 3 seconds and is destroyed by the NPCs. It does not cause any line of sight issues. When it's destroyed, it spawns these orbs around it, which should be picked up. Picking these up will put a buff on you and anyone within 15 yards of the orb. At 70%, Phase 2 starts. The only abilities still present from Phase 1 are Deathbrand and Allure of Flames. In Phase 2, Archimonde will cast Wrought Chaos, which targets the entire raid. It links 2 people together and then shoots a laser beam between them after 5 seconds. This happens 3 times in a row. He also does Shackled Torment, which targets 3 random players and deals an increasing amount of damage per second to them. These 3 players need to run 25 yards away from where they were affected by this spell. You'll know where this is because your soul will be in that position and there will be a chain linking you and your soul. When they get 25 yards away, an explosion will occur in that 25 yard radius from where they got the spell, and anyone inside that 25 yard radius will die. At 55%, a couple ads will start spawning. Dreadstalkers should be cleaved off and are more for the ranged DPS. Don't stand in their circles. Fellborn Overfiends cast Flames of Argus, which needs to be interrupted. At 40%, Archimonde in the raid will ascend to the Nether. Upon entering the Nether, he will heal to 50%. Make sure someone is always within range of the boss or he deals raid-wide damage. In this phase, Dark Conduits are put on random rage players and spawn these orbs. The affected player and anyone within 8 yards of them takes damage when the orb spawns, and spawning one orb on top of another is a good way to wipe. Once these have spawned, they do nothing, so if you need to run through them, you can. 4 people are branded with Mark of the Legion in this phase. This deals deathly amounts of damage to that person and knocks them back. The damage and knockback is decreased based on the amount of people within 10 yards of the affected player. Anyone hit with Mark of the Legion will receive a 12-second debuff that increases the damage they take from it by 600%. The marked player will always be knocked back from the direction they're facing. Anyone else will be knocked back in relation to where they stand to that person. So if you're standing to the left of the marked player, you'll get knocked to the left. Archimonde will do Seething Corruption, also referred to as the Dance. He covers 2/3 of the platform in poison every 4 seconds for 12 seconds. If you stand in this, you die. In this phase, there's a few ads. The first are Infernal Doombringers, which spawn after falling into these green swirlies. The Infernals will start doing a raid-wide AoE once they reach full energy. They also heal themselves if within 15 yards of another Infernal. Source of Chaos will spawn in front of the boss and hits whoever Archimonde was targeting. This beam will push the player backwards and deals damage to them every half second. Being hit by this beam increases your damage taken from it by 5% for 1 minute. The pushback force is reduced if other players stand between the source and the tank. Rogues can use Feint, and Death Knights can use Anti-Magic Shell to help soak this source. This decreases the risk of the tank falling off the platform. 5 Void Stars will also spawn, 1 in each corner and 1 at the back. These fixate a random player, and if they reach that player, they and anyone within 8 yards of them will be knocked off the platform. In Phase 1, my guild popped all of our offensive cooldowns on pull, including Ring and Bloodlust. We did this to get Archimonde to 70% before a second Doomfire spawned. This allowed us to avoid dealing with too much fire. The first Doomfire that spawned was killed immediately. The tank not on Archimonde would collect the fires and drop them off away from the raid. Make sure that whoever picks these up does so in a timely manner, as all the fire needs to be picked up before Allure of Flames, but not too soon, as if the fire falls off of them before Allure, you'll probably die. We typically had the player assigned for this picking up all the fire about 8 seconds before Allure. All the range would spread out in a semicircle around the boss, so no one was causing more Shadowful bursts to happen. Shadow Priests can use Dispersion and Hunters can use Deterrence to solo soak their bursts. As many people as possible should be getting in the purple aura when needed. The Deathcaller that spawns is ignored and only takes damage from Cleave in Phase 1. Once we hit 70%, we immediately killed the Deathcaller. A few seconds later, the first trio of Wrought Chaos came out. We never had a stacking setup for these, we just made sure that no one was in someone else's beam. Exorsus is a handy add-on for helping with this. Make sure that when Rot goes out, you're only moving along your line, never side to side, as this can and will kill someone. The direction of your arrow is the only direction you should be moving. If you absolutely do need to move, do so right when Rot Chaos goes out so everyone has time to adjust if they need to. Druids would use Roar every single Shackled Torment. As soon as the raid was 25 yards away from all the shackled players, those players were able to break their chains. Keep in mind that if you are shackled and someone else is shackled and they break theirs, you will not take damage from their breaking. You only take damage if you are not a shackled player. When these went out, out, we ping-ponged between the boss's starting position and the center of the room. When moving back and forth, we made an effort to not stack on each other so Rot Chaos had more room. With our DPS, we were able to pop the ring for a second time after the second set of Shackle Torment. This caused it to explode on Dreadstalkers that were just spawning before or during the third Shackle. By the fourth Shackles, we were almost at 40%, so we just focused on Archimonde. Death Callers in this phase were targeted by everyone and killed as quickly as possible. Overfiends were also killed as quickly as possible. Make sure that you keep these interrupted. A ranged player will need to interrupt this guy when moving for Shackles and during Rot Chaos. In this phase, Dreadstalkers were cleaved. Druids would use Starfall when they could to help kill them faster. The tank soaked the first Doomfire. Everyone after that was soaked by a ranged player. We used the Priest. They just soaked the fire before a lure and then dropped it back in the exact same spot. When we got to the nether phase, all the ranged immediately spread out along the edge of the platform to ensure the first batch of dark conduits were off to the sides. If any adds were still alive, we would kill them before switching to Archimonde. When Mark of the Legion came out, we had the affected players run other marks, and then groups of 4 people were assigned to go to a mark and help soak. We used an add-on called Mark of the Legion Helper to assign people to a mark. We set up world markers in a small square in front of Archimonde. Marked players would go to the world marker that matched their raid marker, so Star would go to Star. When Infernals came out, they needed to die as quickly as possible. As this fight goes on, more Infernals will start to spawn with each wave. We had a Death Knight assigned to each corner and would pull the closest one to them. Any other taunting class would split up the rest of them to ensure they didn't heal. Melee would focus the front 2 Void Stars as those will never target them. The ranged were split up amongst the back 3 Void Stars. Keep in mind that it's better that you move off to the side and die alone than stand in the raid and knock everyone off if the Void Stars aren't being killed quickly. Druids would use Roar for every dance phase. This really helps when one of the safe zones are in the back of the room. As this last phase goes on, a lot of the abilities will start to overlap. For example, you get a dance phase as a source of chaos is still up, or you'll get a dance phase while Infernals are still alive. Your goal is to kill any ad as quickly as possible to reduce the duration of overlapping abilities. We saved Ring in this phase for the second set of Infernals. It would normally explode on the source of chaos that spawned after the Infernals. We popped our second potions and anything we had left for our third set of Infernals. This one had 4 of them spawn and the dance about 6 seconds after the final Infernal spawned. For the 5th set of Mark of the Legion, we sacrificed any DPS who were marked as we were close to finishing the fight at this point, and it made more sense to lose 1 person than potentially lose 5. It also reduced the amount of healing needed at that moment. We also ignored the 4th source of chaos for the same reason. Raid-wide defensive cooldowns were saved for Rot Chaos and Infernal spawns. Personal defensives were used as needed. We found them very helpful to have up for the later Infernal spawns. In phase 2, make sure you master the art of standing still for Rot and when to break a chain. In the Nether, master the art of spreading out for Conduit and killing anything that is not Archimonde as fast as you can. Those are, in my opinion, the things that you will wipe to most often. That was a too long didn't read version of Mythic Archimonde. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know down below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching and have a terrific day. I will see you all in Legion.